But then how, to get back to my original question, is there some type of a way to determine when loyal opposition becomes obstructionism?
Well, an example of, I guess, loyal opposition to help us quantify the difference between loyal opposition and obstructionism would be Wendell Willkie, who was a prominent Republican candidate in the 1940s who actually joined forces with Roosevelt during World War II to, I guess, consolidate ideologies.
Loyal opposition can become obstructionism when the opposition is no longer upholding the principles and standards of American government. Loyal opposition in Britain is great because not only does it provide alternatives, but it also seeks to uphold the Queen's government.
And I would also challenge the premise of the question, because we don't necessarily think that obstructionism is necessarily not a part of loyal opposition. Obstructionism in the idea that you would like to prevent certain legislatures to be passed for the national interest is certainly valid if you truly believe that this is what's best for the country.
In your opening presentation, you referenced the role of parties as part of American loyal opposition, but in what ways, if any, is the party system injurious to the concept of loyal opposition?
Well, we see that party system obviously does help loyal opposition in the fact that it encourages deliberation. But one instance in comparison between Britain and America, we see the party system is less defined in America. In Britain, when they have confidence votes, the parties always vote within their bounds. The conservatives always vote with conservatives, and Labor always votes with Labor. But here in America, as we see with the healthcare bill, we see that opposition within parties, within like the Democratic Party itself, often is injurious to the legislative process.
Well, thank you very much. You can take a breath.
I'm sure I speak for my colleagues when I say that after a spirited conversation like that, there's no doubt in our minds why Virginia is one of the teams here competing on Monday. And even though there are no additional rounds of competition that our feedback can benefit you in preparing for, we're going to give you some observations anyways as a sign of our appreciation for your good work, but also because we know the real test is how you behave and perform as citizens in the democracy when you go on from here. So I'll start that off with strong compliments for defining, and I think in your opening presentation, and then revisiting that in our questions, some clear principles for how one distinguishes when you've got loyal opposition and obstructionism. You know, you defined it in terms of tactics. You know, if someone were the golden rule, one of you said, I think that's exactly right, and that's, I think, you know, whenever you're in the opposition, you're going to claim that you're being loyal. You're going to claim that you're acting with integrity. So, what are the objective measurements that the rest of us can use to assess that? And whether someone acts consistently under similar situations is, I think, very much right on. Similarly, whether you're putting politics over policy, demonizing the other party, misrepresenting, I think those are really important ideas. And I think that those are, I will take those two principles away as I look on political discourse and evaluate that for myself. So I think that's really important ideas that you hit on. One thing I'd urge you to think about, because the party system was such a embedded part of the way you looked at this, is whether, you know, partisan politics the party system is really hurting us. I mean, I think some people would argue, and I'm not trying to state my own political views, but the party system has gotten to a place where senators and representatives are afraid to question presidents, even if the president is of their own party, but has a view that's not consistent with what the party has stood for over time. And I think historically that used to happen more often. I mean, President Lincoln had fierce disagreements with the Republicans in his own party that were in the legislature. President Nixon had fierce disagreements. There were a number of times where Republicans were involved in overriding vetoes of President Nixon's vetoes. So I think that's an idea to think about, but you've given me quite a lot to think about, and I'm just appreciated and encouraged for our country that you all will be inheriting it from us as part of the next generation.
To supplement what my colleague said, if you were wondering what I was fishing around for, and it was basically the test between self-interest and common good. You danced around it, you were basically there, and so I just didn't want to leave you with saying, heck, well, why was she pursuing this issue? And that's right out of Madison's definition of a faction, self-interest over the common good. But in any event, I thought your presentation and prepared remarks were very well put together. You touched upon, you showed a definite understanding in your responsiveness to the questions. I think you showed not only depth, but breadth, and those are all good things.
I thought you had a very smooth presentation and touched on some really crucial issues. The whole idea that our party system is predicated on this first past the post system, I think, is incredibly important, and it's one of the things that separates us from the parliamentary system. I think you did articulate some good standards, and let me suggest what they are in terms of something you didn't quite say, and it's more important to you than it is to us because it's the time horizon. You are, when you're talking about the golden rule, I think a lot of times parties who are ascendant at any particular point in time can't imagine that they won't always be ascendant. If we're in the majority now, surely we will be in the majority in the future because we have convinced a majority of the voters now that we're right, and they will continue to see the wisdom of our enlightened leadership. I've been around long enough to know that kind of turns periodically, but that time horizon and your skills in dealing with that, it seems to me, are extremely important, and you've touched on really important issues there. I'll give you a phrase that I think would be useful in terms of talking about this. And Jim Wright, the former Speaker of the House, is still alive and kicking down in Fort Worth, and I see him about once a year. And he inevitably says that when he was getting started in politics, he learned you could disagree without being disagreeable. And you touched on a prime example of that, it seems to me, with the Dirksen and LBJ relationship. Why is it that they were able to get things done, like the '64 Civil Rights Act? And you touched on it. They didn't question each other's motives. And they didn't question each other's motives because they knew each other. They were in different parties, but they may have even consumed some alcoholic beverages together. And so that it's hard to question a person's motives when you know them that well. I think you did a wonderful job here and to be congratulated for this.